Productivity. Gladiator.
I'm Brian Nelson Palmer. On this show, I share personal, practical productivity skills that will make you more productive and advance your career. And in this episode, we're talking about how to fight busy with the COAT method and tell the difference between productive and busy. And with me on the show today is Sarah Ohanesian, who is a keynote speaker and the founder of So Productive. Sarah, thanks so much for being on the show with me.
You are so. We'll end that. We'll stop with that right away so it doesn't get annoying, but I like it.
We're going to talk about so much today. Yes, we are. Very good. So thanks for being on the show today with me. And for those folks who aren't familiar with you or your work, talk about how you're related to our topic today about productive versus busy and the COAT method and that stuff.
Well, we're joking about so because my company's called So Productive, which is also my initials, SO. And that's really what I'm on a mission to do. Brian, throughout my career, I was noticing so many people are busy and overwhelmed and really struggling with this burnout. And this is currently the crisis that we are facing right now in most of our work lives. And so I realized, what could I do to help people? And I thought productivity is something I just love. And my mission behind it is certainly, yes, help you get more done during the day, help you be as productive as you can be. But my real reason for that is so that people can go home at night, be with the people they love, get really high quality work done during the day, but then have time to rest, relax, recharge, be with the people that you love most, doing the things that you love.
Gosh, I love that you and I now know each other because holy smokes, the description you just gave sounds like how I introduce myself when I'm on other podcasts. And here you are on Productivity Gladiator, the Venn diagram of what you and I like to talk about. We're going to have to limit ourselves to a little bit of time because something tells me you and I could go for a while on this topic. So thanks for that. That's a treat. Now tell me one other fun thing I like to ask, which is, there's a lot of people out there like us that talk about productivity. So what would you say makes you different from all those other people out there?
Well, to me, and I know we're going to probably get into this quite a bit, Brian, is to think about what actually does productivity mean. So one of the things that I found is we have this definition of productivity in our heads, or maybe we've been taught, maybe stories we've told ourselves over the years. But I really like to challenge people on, what does productivity mean to you? My definition of productivity is progress towards our priorities. So it can be different for everyone. What's productive to you might be different for the next person, might be different for your boss, might be different for someone else on your team. But thinking about, what does it mean to you when you get to the end of the day and you feel productive? What does that look like for you? What does that mean for you? And that's ultimately where it came down for me, was thinking about progress towards priorities, progress towards things that really, really matter. So essentially, we feel really good at the end of the day. So I've honed in on, what is that definition of productivity? And one of the primary differentiators I think I bring to the table here for people is helping them get clear on what that actually means for them.
Well, I can't wait for you to help me get clear on what that means for me, and vice versa, and for you listening too. This is going to be fun. I like this. So let's jump in now. So what I want to do is zoom out first. Let me kind of set the stage here. So when we talk about the busy trap in busy versus productivity, what exactly are we talking about there? So for the person listening, how would you describe it, Sarah, for what does it look like in the real workplace? What are we talking about here?
Well, to me, how it shows up is busy feels chaotic. It feels, when we say to someone, "How are you?" "I'm busy." It feels almost like this badge of honor that we've earned. I'm busy. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, doing all these things, and I'm busy and busy and busy. My schedule is packed, and I've got to go to the next thing, and I'm on to the next, and everybody needs to get a hold of me. That's chaotic. That is busy. It's very easy to be busy. It is very easy to fill the calendar. It is very easy to sit and answer emails all day and respond to every ping and ding and thing that's coming our way. Go back to that definition of productivity that I just shared. The productivity, the being productive part of this, it's not the same as being busy, because anyone can be busy. To be productive, we have to have a sense of, where are we going? Where are we headed? Are we making progress? Are we doing the most impactful work? That's actually being productive. And so it switches us from busy. I think a really simple way to think about this is busy is reactive, doing whatever pops up next. Being productive, that's being proactive. That's thinking about how do I want to take one step towards a goal that I have. So I hope that's helpful for people to think about that is, are you feeling busy, chaotic, overwhelmed, reactive, or are you feeling productive? And I keep saying feeling because it really comes down to how do you feel about the work that you're actually accomplishing?
Yes. I very much can relate to in the feeling department. At the end of the day, when you're productive, you feel it's a feeling. You feel like you were productive. When I go from meeting to meeting to meeting and I check emails and I do meetings and all of the things that were hanging over my head are still hanging over my head. So when you describe it
Mm-hmm.
as I love that you said feeling because that is very much it for me too. It is very much a feeling. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I wasn't productive today. So
And it's
I love
what
that.
I hear from people, especially in corporate settings. I was busy all day, but I didn't get anything done. I was busy all day, but I don't have anything to show for it. I was busy all day, but my goals are still sitting on the back burner. And that can be a goal for yourself, for your team, for
Yeah.
your business, but it really is something that we end of the day and we know if we were busy or we were productive.
True story. Gosh. All right. Well, then let's dive in. So we want to get past that. We want to be productive, not busy. So you talk about the COAT method. So kick it off for us. Walk me through it. What's the COAT method?
Well, coat, and think of it like a coat you put on, a COAT coat. And the reason that I like this metaphor, and it came up with the acronym over years and years of working and tinkering through this, but I came up with it and I thought, actually, I love that it's a coat because it acts as this inherent protective metaphor. It's meant to protect us. It's meant to be this coat of armor, essentially, that we put on that protects us from that barrage of being busy. And
Yeah.
so, Brian, I'll start with the C, and then we can unpack that a little bit. The C is for clarity. Get clarity. Are you clear on what you want? Why that matters to you? And I like to spend when I'm speaking or working with groups, I like to spend a lot of time here because this to me is 90% of the productivity equation. Brian, have you ever been tasked with doing something, or maybe you were voluntold for something and you thought a few months later, maybe this isn't what I thought it was going to be? This project or this thing I volunteered for, this isn't exactly what they told me. Like, feels like a little bit of a bait and switch. And so, what I find for so many people is we're living in what I call the clarity gap. And we're living in this gap between what we thought the expectation was, what we thought we were going to be doing, and what that real expectation is. And so often it's because we're not clear on what those expectations even are in the first place, or what the project is, or what the task is. So I would rather people spend a lot of time getting clear on what it is, why it matters, and then doing the work. That becomes a lot easier, but we've got to be clear on what it is and why it matters in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. So that's clarity is first. And the thing that immediately jumped to mind for me in my sessions and when I'm talking to groups and organizations, one of the things around clarity is the one thing. What is the one next thing that you need to do? Because what they do is oftentimes what they'll say is, yeah, Brian, you're going to lead this effort to implement this new thing. Great. Well, that actually is broken down into a whole bunch of little tiny things. And for
Exactly.
if you haven't been to project manager school, getting all those little steps and all the things that need to happen, and your focus is on the one next thing that you need to do, and focus entirely on that. Because if you lose that, you will never get to the end. So
100%.
I like the clarity.
For sure. And Brian, I call this the push it protocol. And you hear that song from Salt and Pepper from Push It real good. So,
Yep.
but the push it protocol is exactly what you're saying. We push things off. And when I say push it, I mean like we're changing the due date, we're making it later. We look at the task and say, you know what, I'm gonna just do that next week. And the next week comes and you're like, yeah, maybe that's a next month thing. And we keep pushing things off, but it's usually because of the reason you're saying it's too big. We've got these goals and these tasks and these projects that are absolutely humongous. And so we think, I'll just deal with that later. But instead, how could we break it down into bite size? And Brian, when I train on this, I will tell you, I have to, people share one of their goals and what's one small thing they're going to do next to make that happen. Pretty much every time I have to say smaller, 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 micro, teeny, teeny, tiny, because we're so geared towards big, audacious goals, which I love. I'm all about that. But what is the micro, mini, bite-sized task we ourselves can do to actually make that happen? So that's what gets us
Yes.
out of that push it protocol.
I love that. All right. So that's clarity. Then O. What's O?
So O is for organize. A lot
Okay.
of us have tasks all over the place. We've got post-it notes in our cars, maybe. For ladies, potentially in the bottom of our handbag. We've got stuff in our computer bag. We've got stuff at our desk. We've got stuff in this digital tool that we're using. So we have tasks all over the place. And my goal with the organized step is for helping people get it into one location, and one location that you actually enjoy. And what I mean by that is people say to me, well, what's the best tool? What's the best app? What's the best place? I've got a new journal. I'm going to keep it in there. I've got a new planner. That's the place I'm going to keep stuff. I'm certified in a bunch of them. I love them. We could do a whole separate podcast about tools. My goal with this is that you pick a tool that you're actually going to use. It becomes your central source of truth. This is where you put the tasks that really matter, that you want to actually cultivate and get those things done. So I like to help people organize them into one location. And then from there, Brian, we can separate them into ideas and actionable items. So that's kind of the part two of organizing things. Because what I find is, I'm sure on this show and probably you listening today, you probably have a lot of really good ideas. A lot of them. Like, they're really solid. But can we take action on all of those ideas right now? Maybe not. I wish we could, but maybe we can't. And so this concept of separating ideas, thoughts, things we want to handle maybe later, maybe next week, maybe next month, we don't know exactly when, those have to be on an idea list, which is separate from the shorter bite-sized action list. It's a shorter list of things we can actually take action on. And that's really a critical step in organizing. So first, get it into one spot and then decide, is this something I'm doing like soonish, or is this something I need to just save for later?
I love that you said that, because if you've been listening to this show or you've heard me speak before, the way that I describe what you're talking about is there are three places that you write things down. The calendar is where you need to be. The to-do list is what you need to do. And your notes, lists, and checklists is where you write down things you want to remember. So where to be, what to do, and what to remember. You have three places for those. And so what you just said, I was sitting here going, yep, absolutely. Yep. Difference between action and like things you need to remember would be your ideas and things that you're dreaming about. And yes, you've got lists or journal or whatever it is. I use Google Docs. People use Evernote. There's all kinds of ways to do it. But your to-do list is actually the action that you need to take. Or in my case, the one next thing that I was just talking about goes on the to-do list. So like, man, Sarah, we've been talking about that Venn diagram on You and Me. Like, this is great. I love it.
Yeah, but I find, I love that you talk about that so much as well, because what I find is people are very overwhelmed by the size of their quote to-do list. And in reality, there's a lot of things sitting on our to-do list that shouldn't be there in the first place. To your point, maybe that is a calendar appointment. Maybe that is an idea, a concept. I hear a lot of people, I want to be a speaker. I want to write a book. I want to get a promotion. Well, that doesn't go on the to-do list. That's a goal. That is a big, lofty goal that we have. When we put that on our to-do list, it sits there. And then back to feelings. When we see that goal, let's just write a book, because it's big. It's easy for us to conceptualize. Write a book sits on people's to-do list month after month and day after day, but it's so big we don't make any progress. And then at the end of the week, we think, I didn't do that today. And now I'm sad. But instead, I'd rather you say, write one sentence of the book. Write one sentence. Get that done and feel better and create some momentum there. Like, get to your point. One next action. Get it started. Just do the next thing. But we've got these big, lofty things sitting there, and they're just making us feel bad.
True story. Absolutely. I love that example. Okay. You and I could go on and on about all of these things, but I'm kind of excited. All right. That's C, clarity, and O for organize. What's
Mhm.
next?
A is act. Take action. It's go time. Again, let's just stick with that book example. Many of us have these goals. We are smart people. We are capable, talented professionals, but we get to the end of the day and think, I didn't get anything done today because we didn't take any action on the items that we actually wanted to create, the items that we wanted to get done. So, Brian, you mentioned calendar earlier. This is in my world where calendar comes into play because we have to look at the reality of the day we have coming up or the next few days coming up and think, when can I take action on these items? So we've got things on this list, this actionable list. When are we going to put it on the calendar? When are we going to have an hour? When are we going to take 3 hours and actually get into some flow and deep dive and do some real work on this? But when are we going to take action? And big dreamers, but no action. What is that called? It's like if you have a big dream, but you don't do anything about it, it's just a hobby. It's not a business. And I think a lot of people get stuck there. Like, you're not an author if you haven't written a book. So what are we doing to actually take action, micro bite-sized actions to move the needle forward on those goals, those things that are going to make us actually feel productive? And so one of the things that I find happens here, Brian, as a byproduct of this is a concept I call compounding productivity, which is really momentum. So when we take that small action, feels good. Feels like we started to make some progress. It feels productive. It feels like now we're getting somewhere. And then all of a sudden, momentum starts to kick in. And so that's this concept of compounding our productivity. One right thing leads to the next. It actually becomes a bit of a runaway train, which is great.
Yes. I love the train. The momentum thing
Yeah.
resonates with me. And one of the things you said about ACT, the recent episode I just did was about planning your week in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of, like, Sarah, you just said the calendar. When are you going to do it? Most people don't ever mark when they're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the stat that he shared that still is so vivid, like he said it, and it was one of those, oh my God, this is so true, is that 94% of managers know that they should, one of the ways to be productive is to plan your week in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And only 0.8%, less than 1%, actually plan their week in advance every week. And so for you, the difference between productive and busy is, when are you going to do this stuff? When are you going to act? And that comes from planning your week in advance. And so
You
ACT
have
is
to.
resonates.
I really like do not know how it happens otherwise. Like, I just don't know. Like, people are like, I don't use my calendar. I don't really plan ahead. I'm like, what? It's crazy to me. But for me, and then it's the same people that say, gosh, I in 2026, the whole year, I didn't get anything done. Well, yeah, you never had time on your calendar to actually do it. And so often, this concept of flow and getting into a state of flow, so many managers and people working in businesses, right? We're going to meeting all day long. How much can you realistically get done in the 15 minutes between the meetings? Like, oh, the meeting ended a little early. Like, great. How much can you really get done in that space? Not that much. And so this concept of getting things on your calendar and giving yourself an adequate amount of time to actually get something done, like a solid 2-hour block of work, some deep quality work time, that's when we're going to move the needle. That's when we're going to really feel productive. And so I'm seeing these calendar audits that I do, scattered calendars. And I think, what if we had just the block of meetings in the morning and then we had a little more time in the afternoon to actually get some really good quality work done? What would that do for businesses? Like, if you're a manager, what would that do for your team?
Yep. And especially if you're a manager, by the way, there are some people that I've met who have a perception that they can't put time aside on their calendar for productivity because they have to be available for meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to tell you right now that if you've got deadlines, if you've got things you need to do, then that time goes on your calendar, because your company, your organization hired you. They are paying you to get stuff done. Your job description is not go to meetings and respond to emails. Your job description says, a lot of other things. And so at the end of the year, they're going to be judging you on the things that you did, not the meetings that you attended or the emails that you responded to. No, it's not that. And so if you have a bunch of things that are behind or hanging over your head, you are only one person and you need time to do those things. So you need to mark your calendar. And if that means you're not available for half of the day because you got to spend half of the day on this stuff, then yes, mark your calendar off for half of that day. And if people reach out and they want to move some stuff around and they're like, hey, listen, obviously there are people who you're going to need to take the meeting even if you had marked it as productive time.
100%. And so what I see with organizations is this concept is, we get it, but it's very hard to actually pull off, because how do I decide that my manager, my boss, they get to override and have time with me, right? So this is going back to, Brian, we're kind of floating back into the sea a little bit here, because this is where I see the clarity gap really in play at businesses. The leader says, Brian, I want to meet with you. How's 4:00 today? And you're like, that was my time. I was really going to work on something that matters most to me, but I'll just get rid of that time because you're the boss, and I'll take the meeting with you instead. What does that do to you? What does that do to the time that you had set aside? What does that do for the priorities that you thought were important? So again, this clarity gap comes into play because so many of us are actually afraid to say to my boss, do you know what? I was going to work on this today. So is the thing that you want to meet about essentially more important of a priority than that, or less? And let's have a real open, honest conversation about this. Now, Brian, the pushback I get on that is I could never ask my boss that. I could never say that. Well, for the managers that this podcast is really for, like if you are a manager, please, if you take nothing else from today, please be a manager who lets and encourages the team to come with you to have these open, honest conversations around what are the priorities. Please be that. Please be the manager that encourages this, because this, like closing the clarity gap on what's important and why it matters, that to me is a differentiator in 2026 for businesses. Then 100%.
100%. Agreed. Yep.
But if people are afraid to come to you and say, but I don't want to ask, I'll just do what I told, I'll just move the meetings around, we're very unclear on what the priorities actually are in so many businesses that I work with. And this is, I'm on a soapbox. This is industry agnostic. This doesn't matter, big companies, small companies. I am seeing this as a global problem right now. So sorry, Brian, I went off.
True story. And, I think especially this is timely also that discussion is important because with AI, everything is going faster. Mm-hmm. Everything is getting faster. People are able to get stuff done faster, which means you have more to do, more to keep track of, more. That means instead of 6 projects, you're able to lead 10, but that means you've got 10 different sets of actions and things that you've got to manage and organize. Like that's what we're talking about here is we're scaling up. AI really allows us to scale up. And as a result, this is where you got to be able to get your stuff done, because now you're juggling 10 balls instead of 6, which means you got to be paying attention. You got to have time to juggle those balls. And so you can't just go have a meeting with your manager whenever they ask. However, that said, I also encourage in that discussion, one of the things that managers don't know is they don't know all the stuff that you're doing. Mm-hmm. So if instead of it's not no, it's yes and. This is the question that comes up. How do I say no to my boss? You don't say no to your boss. Exactly. You say yes. You say yes, and that time was reserved for this thing, for this customer or this group that was really important, and I need to get it done by tomorrow. So is this something that should I bump that so that I can meet with you, or can you wait till tomorrow so that I can get this done for them? Or like having that prioritization discussion is what managers really need to know if you're going to bump them. But it's that prioritization that's huge. So I love that you
call that the clarity meeting, and that's a meeting I'm encouraging. And nobody wants more meetings, but if we're going to have a meeting, we're wasting time in status meetings where everybody gets to go around the room and say like, "Hey, what did you do this week? How's it going?" I would rather scrap that meeting and have a real clarity meeting. Looking ahead for the next 10 days, what are the top priorities? What's on your plate? What could move off? What could go to next week? What do we want to move to the top? I would much rather see businesses have that meeting. I think that can change a business in the next year.
For sure. All right. So we've got clarity, then
Yeah.
organize,
Yep.
then act. And now the T in coat is
take time.
Take time. Okay.
And what I mean by that is actually to take some time off, not work, rest, have your mind clear. I know this is like a crazy concept for people. People are like, oh, pull off the road. This lady's lost her mind. But there is some research that shows like when we actually do this, when we actually take an evening off, we are more productive the next day. We have to have this time to reset. It is not sustainable to be on 100% all of the time. And again, this is the thing that when I teach this, people are like, oh, that's kind of cute. That's kind of like the warm and fuzzy part of this. Like, oh, that's adorable. Take some time off. I am serious because this is the piece that I actually believe can be most critical. Because imagine if you've had a good night's sleep. Imagine if you didn't work till midnight. How would you feel when you got up in the morning and you got to work and your mind was clear and your head was fresh and you actually felt really energized about the work ahead? You will get more done. You will be more productive. And it's just a concept that people are really struggling with. So I see two parts of this. One is first to physically check it off your list. And I think about like, I love taking like a juicy Sharpie and marking something off my list. I also use Asana, task management, project management software, and a unicorn flies across the screen when you accomplish something. But the reason that matters is because it's saying to our brain, bye. I don't have to think about this anymore. I don't have to worry about this thing. I don't have to keep it held in my head. I can get rid of it. So physically getting it checked off your list is very important. And then the second part of it is celebrating a win. Saying to yourself, like, I deserve a 2-minute break. I'm going to go get myself a cup of coffee. I'm going to take a quick walk around the office. I'm going to take a quick walk around my neighborhood. I'm going to just take a moment to pause and actually celebrate the win that I've had here. And then the other part of it is, imagine if you said, as a manager, imagine if you said to somebody on your team, great job, great job. Your work on that project really mattered. Thank you so much. How far would that go in businesses? But many of us, we just check something off the list and we're on to the next. So the take time is about celebrating wins, honoring what we've accomplished, checking those things off the list, and actually saying to somebody else on the team, thank you. This really matters.
You're saying that, and it's funny, when I started Productivity Gladiator years and years and years ago, it actually, part of it came from, I was reading a book, and I cannot remember the book, but it introduced the concept, and I had never heard of this concept before, called a hedonic treadmill. And the hedonic treadmill is where you are the type, you're on a treadmill and you're always on to the next thing. I climbed this mountain and you're immediately starting the next mountain and the next mountain and the next mountain. And you never actually, it's like being on a never ending treadmill and it just never stops. And so I love that. That's the hedonic treadmill is part of why I started Productivity Gladiator, because it has to stop. You have to celebrate the wins. You have to act. What are you going to do to pause for a second and acknowledge that, holy smokes, you finished that big project and it had an impact and they gave you some award. So I love that you said take time, because the hedonic treadmill is the reason why I do this. And it's similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah. So Brian, right now we're recording this in February and it's like national sales meeting time for so many of the big organizations that I work with. And so what I see in some of these meetings is, great job, sales team. Now your goal is higher for next year. And like they celebrate by saying the bar just got raised, which again, I'm all for pushing ahead and moving goals and kind of optimizing our potential. But I want to make sure we're also celebrating those wins at the same time. Now, some organizations I work with, they do a really good job of this. They were just in Vegas. Like I've just been to Vegas and Orlando and all these places. Yeah. They're celebrating their wins, but they're also then elevating the bar as well. So that's my encouragement, is to take time to raise the bar and elevate and keep growing and moving forward, but not without that celebration first.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to come back and ask you, okay, you said take time and you alluded to time off.
Yes.
So I'm curious, when you take time, what does it look like for you, Sarah? What's that? how do you do it? Because I have a
Mhm.
system for me too, and I love that we probably both have systems. So how do you approach this? What do you do?
My system is quite simple. I need time with nature. I need time to, I'm a
Yeah.
big walker. So I love to be really, sometimes I like to go with my husband, but sometimes just alone, like alone in nature, possibly not listening to anything, no earbuds in at all. And it is time for me to think. And what ends up happening, Brian, is sometimes my best ideas have come from that space. There's no pressure. There's no pressure to perform. There's no pressure to do anything. But sometimes on those lonely walks, I've come up with some of my best ideas. So I think about the white space, literally, and
Yeah.
that's what I need. I need some white space. And I don't have any pressure for what that actually means.
You know, for me, I am very conscious of having time without AirPods in or with no stimulation at all. So first, and I wrote an article about this. There's a blog post about this. I have no phone in bed is a new rule that I have for myself that I
Mhm.
started probably about a year ago. It's been transformational
Yeah.
because you just sit there with your thoughts. And not only do I sleep better now, but I also have time for my brain to just wander when it's settling down and making your brain does all these things, connections, synapses.
Mhm.
It's like processing this and then your dreams. And then you're like, there's so many things that happen. You got to have time where you're not doing something else at the same time. So if you're a person who has headphones in all the time and you're always listening to something, when's the time when you're not listening to anything? Like Sarah said, talking about the when you're time with nature or something
Mhm.
for and Sarah, the answer to your question, how I do it is, or the answer to my question that I asked you, how I do it is I know when I plan my week in advance because I am religious about doing this. And when I do it, the mark over the years, I've noticed that I need one weekday night and
Mhm.
one portion of a weekend day where I don't have anything on the calendar. There is nothing there. Sometimes I just want to sit and watch a show and like not with my phone, not multitasking, like actually watch a show or I listen to a book or sit outside or go for a walk with nature or something.
Mhm.
That time is not planned. It is me time. I call it my me time and I need 2 segments of me time every week. And if I don't get that time, it can just be 2 hours. For me, it's a week. It's a after work one day. And then it's either a morning, afternoon, or evening of a weekend day.
Love
And
it.
so if that works, that's cool. And I plan that in advance. And then I also plan my week in advance with my wife. So then it's like, when are we having dinner together? What are the plans we have for the family? There's a lot more in life, right? So I know when I say that, the immediate reaction I get from a lot of people is, how on earth do you have time for that? And
Right.
actually, the reality is, if you put it down, if you plan it in advance, everything else can kind of shift around it. And so I haven't had a hard time, even as life has gotten busier and busier, and now AI and now productivity gladiators going places. And like, there's all these great things happening, and life is busier than ever. I still don't miss my 2 times a week, my weekday night and my 1 week portion of a weekend day. So that's take time for me looks like that. And
I
God, it's
love it.
huge.
And what you're describing are what I call the HPTs. So high priority tasks, high
Okay.
priority time. What are the things that really matter to you?
Yeah,
Work, not work, those things that are high priority for you, they go on the calendar first. Get your
for sure.
HPTs in first. That's it. And that's
HBCUs
it.
in
And then
first.
it will happen. It will happen.
It will happen. Absolutely. Well, now, you know what I'd like to do is go back and forth with you a little bit on so we talked about productive and busy, and
Mhm.
you've got the COAT framework, which I love. Now, in terms of making it relatable, can we just go back and forth with the mistakes that we've seen people make and
Yeah.
the practice that they should be doing instead? Because I know I've got some and I'm sure you do. So what
Mhm.
comes to mind when I ask you that?
One of the big, I don't know if it's a mistake, but it's something that I would love to make people aware of just to see if this is potentially something that you notice. One of them is what I call the productivity parade. And it's when you're doing things that feel productive, but you're actually just doing them for show. And here's what I mean. It's showing up to meetings that you think, I need to go to that meeting so people can see me. I need to be on Zoom with my camera on so everyone can see me, can see that I'm there. It might be replying to an email late at night. Maybe it's so people are like, oh, yes, Brian, great job. Like hitting reply all so we all know that you're working Tuesday at 10 o'clock at night. Like, good for you. But it's
Yeah.
basically this performative productivity. And it's things that we do if we're really being honest about it. That's like, I'm doing it for show. I'm doing it so people can see me. It's not necessarily something that really moves the needle forward. It's not really productive. It is in the busy category. But the only reason I'm doing it is because I have an ego and I want people to see me. So my encouragement for people would be to think about, how does that look for you? I'll give you a quick story, Brian, if I may. There was someone I was working with, and she said, I was describing the mouse jiggler. Have you seen this? It really
Yes.
came to be during the pandemic. So it's this little, if you're listening and you don't know, it's a device that your mouse sits on, your computer mouse sits on it, and it jiggles your mouse just enough so the green light status is on. So of course it looks like you're working no matter what you're doing. And if you're a business that runs on Microsoft or Teams, it keeps the green light status on, right? So people were using this during the pandemic. So I'm talking about this, and this lady says to me, oh my gosh, we had to let somebody go because they were using the mouse jiggler. And I'm like, oh my God, that's terrible. But really what I'm thinking, and this is really for you as a manager, is to think about, why do people on your team think they need to be using the mouse jiggler in the first place? Like, what benchmark are we measuring that people think, well, if I just keep my green light status on, that's productive, that's getting the work done? It's not. And so my encouragement for anyone managing anyone else is, are you measuring things that are performative, productivity parade, or are you really measuring metrics that truly, truly matter for your team? So that's a question I would certainly want to leave people with today.
Gosh, yes. It's the butts in seats. That's the problem that I have with the get back to work thing and the back to the office thing, is if you're rating somebody based on whether their butt was in the seat, or like you said, the mouse jiggler, was their status green? I mean, the reality is, if their status is green, whether they're sitting at their desk or not, most people can get their teams on their phone anyway. And if you're able to communicate with them and they get back to you in a timely manner, then why does it matter? Why does the green versus the yellow matter, to your point? Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely.
And I would just really
Productivity
encourage
parade.
people.
I like that.
Yeah, productivity parade. I was a princess of the parade for a long time, I will say. Because, being present.
I'm sorry, you said I was the princess in the parade. And it's like, oh my God. First of all, the alliteration happening here, it just makes me happy. But then the princess in the productivity parade, please make that GIF or that meme. That should be a meme in your presentation at some point. Sarah, please do that. Oh my God, that's funny.
It's because we're someone who is like, show up. And when people ask me to do something, I say yes. And if you invite this, back to our conversation from earlier, if you invite me to the meeting, I'm going to be there. And I think that's something that many of us, we inherited over time. And we are like, I'm the one that shows up. I'm the one that does all the things. I'm so amazing and I can do all this stuff at once. But guess what? We can't. And so it's leading us into this. It's one of the really productivity pitfall traps that I see, is that we are stuck in this parade doing things because it essentially looks good, but it's not getting us anywhere. So again, I think as managers, we've got real opportunities here to think about, what metrics are we measuring? Does it matter? Does it matter? And this debate about coming back into the office or not, listen, every business is different. There are businesses and teams that I see that are 100% more effective in person. Like, I've seen it. There are teams that I think they could totally work remotely. They might never need to see each other for months on end, and they'd probably be fine. So I don't see this as this black and white. People ask, and I'm Brian, sure you get this all the time too, should we be back in the office? Should we not be back in the office? I'm like, it really depends. Like, there's a lot of factors that come into play on this. But I go back to, either way, are you measuring metrics that actually matter? And that might lead you to the answer of whether your team should be with you or not.
For sure. Absolutely. I question for you listening, which is, if you, when people ask, you get on the meeting and people say, how you doing? Do you say busy? Or do you say overwhelmed? Or do you say there's a lot going on? Stop. Don't do that, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
And the reality is everybody is there. We're all there. If we weren't there before, AI is putting us there. So everybody's busy at this point. And so saying that your status is busy and overwhelmed as a manager who's trying to get somewhere, there is a little piece of me that might hesitate a little bit to want to work with you if busy and overwhelmed are how you feel. So don't say busy. Say, man, we're firing on all cylinders, or man,
Mhm.
there's excited about everything we have going on. Like, show up in that way versus the overwhelmed way. So
For
one food
sure.
for thought.
Yeah, and it's really like the vibe that we're putting out. And
Yeah.
yes, do we want to give someone to that chaotic, reactive, overwhelmed, busy person? Or do we want to give something to that person on our team who's really productive? Like they've got it together. They're measured. They are certainly having a full schedule, but they are
Yeah,
producing in a way that actually moves the bottom line. So I would always go
for
with the
sure.
productive person on that.
And we're going back and forth on the mistakes that I see
Mm,
people make. And so here's a mistake that I see people make, which is going after the thing that's urgent versus important.
100%.
The example I have here is, if you've ever gotten, I get them on LinkedIn most frequently. People are crazy about following up with you if you do not reply to them. So they send you a message and they want to give you some sort of sales pitch, or they want to send, and I get them in emails too. I get them all the time. They come from everywhere. And people are like, oh, this is really important. I want, I need 15 minutes. And I don't reply because I don't need that 15 minutes. It's not important to me. And then they follow up again and they're like, I didn't hear back from you. Can we, discuss or whatever? And then they do it again. And so what happens is eventually they wear you down, because then you start to think, you're like, well, if I'm not responding, then they're going to think that I'm not on top of it, or I'm not whatever. And the reality is it's not important. None of what they want to share with me is something I need right now. If it's not important to you, if it's not one of the actions on your to-do list that Sarah and I have been talking about, if it's not there, then you don't have to reply. However, focus on what's important. Do not confuse urgent or the fact that you haven't followed up with something
Mhm.
being important. So I hope that
Yeah.
resonates.
It really does for me, but I will say I think this is a yes and moment. I know that's a big thing,
Love it.
Brian. Yes, and I love this. I will say though, one of the things to possibly take it a little bit further is to think about also, when is it time to just shut it down and give an actual no, or
Yeah.
not right now? Because sometimes, and I was a chief marketing officer in my past life, and I would have these people like calling me, sales. And at some point I thought, I have to actually just tell them no. So it's one thing to ignore them, but sometimes they get to a point where you can't. And there are times where there's people on our team or someone's waiting for an answer for us on something.
Yeah.
We might have to say, I will respond to you next month, or it's a no. So I think going back to that clarity piece again, I harp on this, Brian, because it all comes back to that, is to think about, can I be more clear though, to actually help them get off my back? It's helping them help you as well. So I think you've got two options here. Like, one, possibly ignore it, but two, you might need to also say, like, when do I actually need to say, I got to put a boundary up here? A no is a no.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Do you have
Brian,
a,
you were talking about mistakes. I've got one more if you want it.
I was going to say, you do one more and I do one more, and then I
Okay.
got a couple more questions. So yeah.
Perfect. So the other common, and again, is it a mistake? I call them a productivity pitfall. But one of them, the other name I have for this is called the Quicksand Conundrum. So the quicksand, if you think about Saturday morning cartoons, like back in the day, we won't have to share our ages here, but I was a baby of the 80s. And so we were watching cartoons, and like every Saturday morning, the characters were falling into quicksand. Like, this is a big storyline for cartoon characters back in the day. But I see this a lot in offices because we're in quicksand, right? So we're sinking deeper and deeper. We're busy, sinking deeper into this busyness quicksand. And the problem with quicksand is that the harder we try, the deeper we sink into the quicksand. So here's some concepts of things that keep us in quicksand. It's working on tasks that look productive. Like we think we're doing the right thing, but it's the wrong tasks disguised as the right task. So it's like, well, I am updating the PowerPoint presentation and the margins are great. And I spent 3 hours on the fonts and the colors are all just right. So I worked on the presentation for 3 hours. That might be quicksand. Because what we should have been doing is finalizing like the call to action. We should have been asking for the sale. We should have been making sure the talking points were right for that particular audience. But instead we were in quicksand working on the margins and the fonts. Does that concept make sense? It's like the wrong things that look like the right test. So we're like, I'm busy. I'm working on all these things. It's like, yeah, but you weren't working on the right things.
True story. And I love that. I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because sometimes those things, I don't know if it's happened to you, many times when managers are looking for things to put in your performance report, your performance review, oftentimes they sound like pay attention to detail more. Or so you might have even been given feedback that you should be more detail oriented or that kind of thing. Two things there. One, if the details you missed caused consequences for your team or your boss or yourself, financial or your accountability or your reputation or something like that, true story. So that these are valid things to give. However, if you're a manager listening or you're a person who's been given this and the details were that the fonts could have been a little better, then I take that personally as a huge compliment, because if that's what they found, if they were they're really reaching, if that's what they found as the thing that you need. So I love that if they're pointing out things that are not necessarily productive, not big things, not drive to the bottom line, not customer service, not if that's what it is, then it's like, I agree that it's okay. Don't spend the time on the fonts necessarily. She called it quicksand. And I love that because like, don't fall for the quicksand. I like that a lot.
Yes. And if you're feeling trapped, stuck, tired, exhausted, like you're burning out, my question for you is, are you in quicksand?
Yeah.
Working on potentially the wrong thing. So it's a little bit of an analysis to do, but you'll really evaluate, like, am I busy all day working on the right things? Or am I busy all day working on the wrong things?
Yes, for sure.
And as a manager, if your team is burning out, if they're coming to you and saying, I'm feeling burned out, I'm feeling overwhelmed, that's an analysis I would do with them. Do that alongside of them. Because they might think, Brian, to your point, oh, you said attention to detail. So here's how back to clarity. Here's how I interpreted this. And as your boss, I'm thinking, no, I wasn't talking about the fonts. So really being clear on what does this mean? So when we say yes, back to that C again, when we say yes to a project, when we say yes to a task, that's the kind of clarity I'm looking for. What is good enough on this project? What does this look like? What does success look like? When you give this to me, what is your expectation of me? What does success look like on this? Then I can deliver. When I'm clear on that, I can deliver. But I don't want to be stuck in the quicksand because we weren't on the same page. We can avoid that. Like there's a lot of wasted effort going on. That's what I'm seeing. So my roundup on my mistakes that I'm bringing to the table here is like a lot of it just comes down to wasted effort.
Yep. I love that. Avoid the quicksand. And I've got the mistake that I'll share for you, Sarah, and I'm sure you've seen this before too, is not writing things down. I can't tell you, I'm in meetings and we go over the point of a meeting. I hope at the end of the meeting, you've made decisions, you've assigned actions, people know what they're supposed to do. When we go over the action items, I'm looking around the room to see who wrote those things down. Or if I'm online, I'm asking, did you make a note of this somewhere? And I straight up ask the question, and people don't get insulted when I ask it. It's really more of a, did you capture that somewhere? Because if you didn't write it down, I know there are certain people and certain customers that if I don't tell them to write it down, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to have to follow up with them because they didn't write it down and they're going to forget and they're not going to do it. So you should have a system for where you keep the things you need to do. And you should hold people responsible for writing things down. There's a fun stat. This is it's called the forgetting curve. They did some research. If you Google this or you go on Wikipedia, you'll find this thing. It's the forgetting curve, and it shows how much people remember over a certain period of time and how much do they forget. And after one day, 50%, you forget half. After 2 days, it's 2/3, almost 3/4. After 3 days, it's less than 15%. So think about that for yourself. If you're the customer or you're counting on somebody to do something and they don't write it down, there's an 75% chance that they're going to forget it by the day after tomorrow. And the day after tomorrow is normally when I'm writing an email going, I see you didn't respond or you didn't provide that thing that you said, whatever. So like that, but the forgetting curve is a thing. So go look at the curve. So you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And I'll put the link in the notes here if I can find it. I just share that because if you don't have a system for writing things down and capturing where you're to do things you need to follow up for people, your accountability these days with AI is very accountable. And so you as a human being demonstrating your value, they shouldn't have to follow up with you either. And that means you've got a good system to write it down.
That's that's really the organized step. Is part of that is your system and having that spot that like the other thing is I also run a workshop on meetings, Brian. We need to collab on this. Running effective meetings, one of the things I see is like we wrote it down, but no one knows where the notes are, where we put the thing. So then they're going, oh wait, I was looking for that because I know someone wrote it down, but there's not a good system in place. So just to piggyback on that, that's really the O, like the full orchestration of the O in an office setting is that we've got a system and the people on the team know the system so they can actually find those notes and what you're looking for. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears for the managers or for somebody, if you supervise people, then Sarah, I wanted to ask you for the manager listening, what can managers do to help their people break out of the busy trap without being a micromanager? Because that's the trick, right? You could micromanage everything. You could just constantly be checking on them, but that's not going to feel good for them either. So what's a better solution there?
Well, I'll give you one guess. It's to be clear. Being clear is a two-way street. So as the manager, you think you're being clear. Give the person that you are managing a chance to respond to that and have them actually repeat back to you. And I know that sounds a little elementary, but to your point, Brian, let's stick with this meeting. We're in a meeting. The meeting's closing out. Brian, what are your next steps coming out of this meeting? Have the person say it back to you and ensure that you are on the same page. Because we've probably all been in meetings where I thought we were in the same meeting. I thought we were in the same room. I thought we were in the same conversation. But when you left and I left, we actually had different interpretations of that. Our perception of that was different. So can we just get on the same page and likely, great, write it down, put it somewhere, put it in your system so that we can remain accountable to that. But my encouragement is don't assume that you've been clear, and then make sure the people on your team have a chance to come to you and ask for that clarity. And then if they do come back a day later, a week later, I started working on that thing and now I have a few more follow-up questions. Please be open to having that conversation with them, because one of the things that gets in our way is fear. We're afraid to go back to our boss and ask. We're afraid to go back to our manager and say, I actually don't know if I understand this. If you have them be fearful, it ends right there. You shut it down. But if you can say, I'm open to that conversation always. If you ever want to have a clarity conversation with me, again, I think that can be a really game changer in a short amount of time. That can be a game changer this afternoon for people.
True. The magic question that I love to ask, and please steal this, write it down and steal this, is what are you taking away from this? And see what they say. Because that's it's, I talked about at the end, ride the train from the meeting or whatever. And one of the things is the action items. And I don't like you as the host of the meeting, you could go through and confirm the action items, but it's more effective if you just ask, what are the action items that we're taking away from this, and let people volunteer the ones that they wrote down or the ones that they're taking away. Way more effective on that approach too. So I love that you shared that, because yes, ask them for that clarity. ask them what they're taking away or what are they getting from this.
Mhm.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Now, last thing that I want to ask, because gosh knows the time flies when we're having fun, Sarah. What's the first thing that people are listening, that the person listening should do from what we've just talked about? If they could just take one thing away from today, what is the first step that you hope they'll take?
I think a really easy one to implement is to have that concept is to take your list, your to-do list, and separate it from ideas and actions. And I believe right away, you're going to have a shorter to-do list. And I think that'll feel really good for people immediately.
Absolutely. And I'm going to yes and if you're going to take two things, because that's Sarah's thing. And Brian's thing is plan your week in advance. Please, please, please. For me, it's 2:00 on Thursday. My calendar is marked for an hour at 2:00 on Thursday. I like that because then I'm already planned. Friday can be an easy day. We're coasting into the weekend. I'm already set up for next week. I like Thursday at 2 p.m. But for you, it could be whatever time, but you have to plan it in advance. Monday morning is too late. It already started. You're already in the thick of it. Please plan your week in advance. That's a huge, huge thing. So then kind of to bring us to a close, first of all, here's what I love. Sarah, I love that you have So Productive is very clever. And now you started an organization named after your initials. And now you're doing this thing on productivity, but you're talking about things that are so practical, especially now with AI. This stuff is more important than ever because people are more busy than ever. In order to keep their jobs, in order to compete with AI, in order to do this stuff, you're going to be doing new and you're going to be doing different. Humans can do change. AI can't do change. So you are leading change. You're doing the hard stuff. And that means you've got to keep track of all this stuff. And so I love that you're giving these tools and this coat method. You came up with this clever little, you're like in a perpetual winter because it's the coat
I wear
method.
A lot of blazers because of
it.
it.
Right, exactly. We don't need, what do you do during summer, Sarah? I don't know. But during the wintertime, yes. But I love that you created this method and that you shared it with us today. So thanks so much for doing what you do. And I love that you're doing this thing.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as somebody who wants to keep track of you or get back in touch later, where should they find you to keep in touch?
So-productive.com. And then very active on LinkedIn. So there's two Sarah Ohanesians. I'm the blonde one. And I've got a check mark in front of my name, a done check mark. So Sarah Ohanesian on LinkedIn.
Sarah Ohanesian on LinkedIn. And you'll see the name, and I'll give you those links in the episode notes for you here too. And for you tuning in, think about someone in your life who struggles with busy versus productive. Think about the person who you were in the meeting, you asked, how are they doing? And they said, busy, like I just said. Who are those people? Maybe it's a friend, a colleague at work, even someone you haven't talked to in a while. Would you share the link to this episode specifically with them? Because I know that Sarah and I would love to know that our conversation today helped someone who needed to hear this. And we'd love to be the excuse for you to reconnect with that person. And getting that link from you, even certainly I'm sure you'll have to preface this so it doesn't seem like you're busy and overloaded. You need help. You're not sending it for that. Be nice, but share this with them because, you've been really busy and you've talked with them about being busy and things are overwhelming. You wanted to share this thing. So we would love to be that excuse for you to connect with them for something other than just work and that kind of thing. And also, if you want more productivity insights beyond the podcast, my email subscribers get access to everything that I create. So come join the email list if you haven't already. And I love sharing Productivity Gladiator with you because together, these productivity skills are going to change your life. That's a wrap.
Productivity. Gladiator.